Um, so we were able to get all of that involved in with Project Ezra. He just happened to be in Israel on October. It happened. Nothing happens. God knew all about it. This didn't take the Lord by surprise. This was God allowed it to happen for many, many reasons. But he happened to be there on October 7th. And he says, Alan, how are we going to be able to help these people? And so we're getting all our information just like you get it from TV, except we're right in the middle of it. And so these people, what Hamas did that morning, they invaded Israel three ways: the land, the air, and the sea. You saw it on TV just like it happened. We were watching it live. And they attacked the kibbutzes. A kibbutz is a farming village or town. And that's what they do. They live there. They make their living there. And they employ the Palestinians from Gaza. That's what they do there. They're work hands, and they've, like this couple that was on the slide. I mean the video. The wife was born there almost 40 years ago. She was born and raised there. Barak, her husband, they were married 20 years ago, so he's been living on the kibbutz there for 20 years. They have children, and they employ. I mean, they come in every morning, do the work in the field. At lunchtime, they come and sit down with them at the lunch table, just like farmers do, and eat with them. So they know the families. They know the children. They know it's like family. And so the kibbutz Nir Oz. Nir Oz was a kibbutz of some 340 people and families. And that morning or that afternoon, when they finally cleared out, they had it was nothing but target practice. There were no soldiers in there. There was no army in there, and you can imagine, and you've already heard all the stories. I won't go into everything, all of that, but it was a massacre, and it wasn't just going in and shooting the people. It was a massacre. It was murder. And so we heard about this. We said, how are we going to help these people? So we went to a hospital there. We heard they were taking a lot of the wounded to the hospital. We went to the hospital and went up to the lady at the welcome desk, and we told her, we're with a humanitarian ministry. We offer financial help to families of victims of terrorism. And this is terrorism here. And she said, well, we have some people here, we have some victims, but we also have an in-house Amutab nonprofit. And any gifts, money that you want to give, we'll be glad, you can give it to us, and we'll make sure the family gives it to them. Well, we can't do that with our ministry. We have to see the people face to face. We have to know that it goes to an individual or family. Anyway, she said, but you can call this number. This is a lady at the hospital. Call her. So I called her, and she said, well, you can give us the money. She parroted exactly what the other lady said, and I told her the situation. We couldn't do that. She said, well, listen, if you'll call this number and ask for Barak, and you tell him that I had you call, he can help you. I called the number. By this time, they had moved. They were only, out of the 340, they were like 160 that were left, 160 families that were left out of the 340, and they burnt the kibbutz down to the ground, all of them. They stole 1,500 bicycles that day from that kibbutz. But I called Barak and I told him who we were, and he said, "Well, we are moved. The government moved us down to a hotel because they had nowhere. There was no place to live. It was gone. And we're in a lot. If you can, we're in a hotel. When can you come?" And I said, "We can leave in the morning." And so we left the next morning, my wife, Agit, and him and his wife, and we ended up down right at the hotel. We couldn't go in because you had Fox News reporters, you had CNN, you had all the reporters. It was like a madhouse. So they had the gate blocked, but we gave him Barak's name. Here he came down, and he says, I have 30 families today that I can bring down, and you can talk with them. And so there was an Aroma coffee shop. You remember seeing the Aroma coffee shops, best coffee, and that didn't make you sick, Pastor. I can tell you that. You're not going to get sick with that coffee. But from about 9 o'clock until 6 that evening, family after family, he would bring to us. It just happened. And they only wanted you to listen. They had to tell somebody what had happened to them. And we listened, and we cried with them. And we finally would give them a nice check. And I would tell each one before I gave them the check, now this money can in no way take the place of what has happened to you. Barak and his wife, they lived there on the kibbutz. His wife was born there. Her daddy lived 2 houses down on the kibbutz from them. They killed her daddy, shot her daddy, and maimed him, killed her sister. Her mother was in Tel Aviv. Happened not, thank the Lord, she wasn't there that day. They killed her. The only reason Barak and his wife and their 2 children escaped is just a week before this happened, a friend of theirs on the kibbutz had made a special lock for the safe rooms. And what was happening, 90% of those safe rooms on the kibbutz, the only way they were able to keep the terrorists from entering was to hold the handle up on the inside of the door. And when Hamas came in, they would just begin shooting into the door because they knew the people were hiding in the safe rooms. And so they just pelleted with AK-47s or whatever, automatic rifle they used. And they killed a lot of people that they would penetrate. Well, this man that developed that lock, he was going around selling them. And Barak said, "No, I don't need that." Said, we've never had a problem. We don't need that. But his wife said, "Look, why don't we? It's just $100. Why don't we get that lock?" And so they bought the lock. And thank the Lord, him and his wife and 2 children were able to get into that room, and they were able to get into a corner of the room away from the bullets that would penetrate. And so they didn't get touched, they didn't get shot at all. They stayed in there all day, and until that evening, and there was a beating on his window. They had the steel windows like we do. A man was beating on it and said, Barak, are you in there? Are you in there? Your house is on fire. You got to get out. And so he recognized it was a man that sold him the lock. And he opened the windows, and there he is. And all the family crawled out as the house was burning from the front, and they crawled out the house, the back part. And when he introduced me to this man, and by the way, this man lost I think his wife was killed. He somehow was able to escape. But he said, this man saved my life twice. Saved it twice. There was one family, I mean, I could tell you, and by the way, our ministry, even our IBJM, our ministry with IBJM, my mission, we were able to help 103 families after they've moved from the hotel into an apartment building that's been given to the survivors of near Oz. But we interviewed, as I said, that first day, 30 more the following day. We've even interviewed over 70. Now we're involved in Haggis. We're involved in helping the hostages. 2 of those hostages that our IDF rescued yesterday, 2 of them. Project Ezra has been able to help 2 of the families. We helped them like months ago, and now they're rescued. But one, and I am gonna get to the passage here that I want to talk about. Is it okay if I may go a few minutes over? Is it okay? Y'all got supper tonight, or okay? But one thing that really, I guess, really touched me more than anything was a family that is on the kibbutz, and the husband was out in the backyard because they border it right here. Here's a fence. This is their backyard that butts up to the fence. Well, he saw them coming through, and they came through in a pickup truck to his property, and this began to spray with their automatic weapons. They shot him in the side, and he ran out of ammunition. He was shooting at them. He ran out of ammunition and ran in his house and was getting his other gun. And his wife and kids, 2 kids, had already gotten into the safe room. And she was able, because they were coming up right to their house, and she grabbed him by his shirt and pulled him into the safe room and was able to, she held the door. And they came in, they shot. Fortunately, they weren't wounded anymore. They weren't shot. But they left. And within 15 minutes, here come the Palestinian women and their children. They came into the house. They went into the kitchen. They began to eat food out of the refrigerator. They spoke Arabic. The whole family, Israeli family, spoke Arabic, so they understood everything they were saying. They went in, sat down on the couch. They turned on the TV. They were laughing and talking, and they thought that anybody would have been in their safe room would have been dead, but they heard every word they said. The wife went in, the woman went in and pillaged through her bedroom and into her intimate apparel and stole all of that, stole their microwave oven, and just took everything. Stayed over an hour, they said, in their house, and they left, and they kept staying in there. They stayed in there another 6 or 7 hours, and then there was nothing. But they smelled smoke, and they'd set their house on fire, and they came out. And they had the little boy, and they had bought him a special toy. And they heard this Arab boy, this Palestinian boy, playing with the toys there. And the little Jewish boy came out, and he saw his toy was gone. And other things, like I said, they stole 1,500 bicycles, all the bicycles from the kibbutz before they burned it down. And the little boy looked around, he couldn't find his toy. And he turned to his mother and he said, "Mother, he said, I hope that little boy that stole, or that took, I don't think he used the word stole, that took my toy, I hope he was a good little boy. It shows the difference between a Jewish family that wasn't looking to hurt or to kill or to maim. And you know, I thought about the passage where King Saul was coming up against the Amalekites. And God said, when you come up against them, you have to kill every man, woman, and child. And I'll be quite honest with you, I remember many times saying, humanly speaking, that sounds pretty hard to kill the children and the animals, because our animals are being offered as sacrificial to a false idol. But then the children, and I saw it with that. Why the children? Because if that mother had told that little boy, take a knife and go, if there had been an infant in the house, and kill it, the little boy would have done it. Not because of the heart. This little boy would have been taught by his family. So we can't blame any of this on the child. They're doing what they've been taught. So why did I bring all this up, and why did I go in, and why is God allowing this to happen now? And why at this time in our existence do we see the anti-Semitism and everything surface? It's always been there. It's always been there. But to have your neighbors that you've employed to betray you and to come in and do what they did, this is what's happened. They've been wounded. Betrayal is something that's, for us as Christians, certainly and even as Christians, when someone betrays us, it's difficult for us. We be honest with ourselves, okay? We're not perfect. But they've been wounded, and they're hurt. And I don't believe that it's only the Lord that can heal that, only the Lord Jesus. But the world has changed. Anti-Semitism is up. It's everywhere. But turn, if you would, to Zechariah chapter 14, excuse me. And what we saw on October the 7th, 2023, was just a very, very small picture of what's going to come in the day of the Lord. And the day of the Lord defined here as the second coming of Christ, when Jesus comes back. And Zechariah sees it here. God showed him the picture here of what's going to happen on the day of his return. And Zechariah tells us and shows us, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. In other words, the armies that come in to Jerusalem, they will pillage the people of Israel, of Jerusalem. They will divide the spoil in the middle. They'll make it to Jerusalem. They'll come in with an ultimate goal of destroying the Jews finally and taking the land, and not only just to take it, but to take the booty, to take the economical, the silver, the gold, everything. they'll be divided. It'll be divided in the midst of the. We saw it happen near Oz. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. All nations, not just Hamas, but as you see, we're already surrounded. Israel surrounded by. We have the enemy, the three H's: Hezbollah in the north, the Houthis in the south, and then Hamas in the center. The three that are currently shooting at Israel, shooting at us, not to mention Iran. By the way, Iran shot 300 missiles at us overnight about 2 months ago. Now, these are intercontinental ballistic missiles. They're this big around. They're 15 feet long. And you know, it's amazing that many of them never even made it to Israel. They landed fully unexploded in the Negev desert. And all of that, one little girl, Amina, one little girl was wounded. Out of all that, Iran was going to wipe Israel off the map. One little girl. If you don't believe there's a God, all you got to do is listen to these. I was there, okay? And a pastor in Virginia heard about the story. He has a radio broadcast. And he heard about it, and he put it on the radio. And within hours, he was getting money. People were sending money to help this Bedouin family. And they didn't even know the Bedouin family. They didn't even know Amina. And how are you going to get any money to help this family with 14 children, 2 wives? It's hard to get along with one wife, Brother Dalkey. But next thing I hear, we get a call from my brother and director of this Project Ezra. He's in Virginia. He lives in Virginia. And he said, Alan, is there any way we can find out how to get help to this little Amina? And within 10 minutes after hanging up, Hagit had called the head of all the hostages. She's in touch with the head of all the hostages, 100 and something that's there. And she told the lady the story, and she said, give me some time. Next day, she called, and she said, I'll have somebody, they'll be calling you very soon. Within hours, a Bedouin lawyer, he says I'm a wannabe Bedouin. The Bedouin are the indigenous tribe people that are kind of like the American Indians. I mean, they've been there for generations after generations after generations. Even when the Jews were dispersed into the world, Bedouins were there. And so, bottom line, the next following day, we were on the way down to Arad, to the Negev on down south of there. And here come the daddy, come out in a 4-wheel drive truck. We couldn't get any vehicle back there. He took us out an hour drive out to his village, the Bedouin village. A big tent set up, really almost as big as this auditorium here. A big fire pit in the middle. And they set us down. We had to cross our legs and sit down. My back still hurts me, brother. And here comes little Joseph, 6 years old, riding up on his donkey, smiling, big smile, and served us the tea, the Bedouin tea. And Mohammed, the daddy, took us. He said, "Come, I want to show you." And that night, see, they're out in the desert to no sirens like we had, and nothing to, we didn't, no sirens, and all they heard was the missiles that we were shooting off of a cruise. We have a Navy. I think there are 2 U.S. Navy ships, maybe 3, and they're heavy cruisers, missile cruisers, and they were knocking down some of that was getting through. But they heard that going off, so he was getting all of his kids out of that room, of their bedroom thing, which is a big living room, down to another area where he thought it would be safer. And unfortunately, a piece of the shrapnel came through the roof and knocked a hole about that big. And little Amina was the last one in there, and he felt guilty that she was hit. It knocked a hole in the floor, which was tiled about that big around, about this deep. If it had hit her head on, it would have took it off. But God allowed it just to graze the right side of her head. But it went into her skull, and it damaged some of her brain, and so it put her immediately in a coma. They didn't expect she would live. They didn't expect at all that she would live. But the day we were there, she had already been in a coma and in the hospital for over 2 months when we got there, finally to help. That day, his wife was there at the hospital, and she was starting to come in and out of that. We were able to give him a very nice gift that were given by Christians like you that love God, they love the Son of God, and they love the people of God, God's chosen people, the Jew. And what a blessing. But that shows you what one soul means to the Lord. One precious little girl. And by the way, she's out of the hospital. Well, she's getting ready to get out of the hospital. She's talking. She's awake. They're going to put her into rehab. A miracle of God. People that love and pray for her. And so I don't know how much longer I can continue to go. There's so many to say, but Zechariah says, I'll gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city be taken, the houses rifled, the women ravished. That's exactly what happened. The women ravished, and half of the cities shall go into captivity. Fortunately, there only was 240 that were taken in captivity by Hamas. But here, half of the city will go into captivity. Jerusalem's the second largest city in Israel. Tel Aviv is number one, just a little over 1 million. Jerusalem is just right at 1 million. So if this happened today, 500,000 people, Jews in Jerusalem, be taken into captivity. And the residue of the people, there'll be those that are left, though, shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. I have a message entitled, The Calvary's Coming. My daddy used to take me to see cowboy movies when I was a kid. And I remember when the Indians would have the settlers surrounded and going around and then all of a sudden you'd hear and it'd be the cavalry coming. Y'all are too young to remember those days. But that was it. So we got the cavalry's coming, and his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives. You were there, Pastor, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof. It'll break in two thereof toward the east. Part of it will go towards the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst of it, therefore toward the east and toward the west. The other part will go toward the Mediterranean, and there shall be a great valley down as a Kidron Valley between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north and half of it toward the south. It'll be a scissors like this, and you shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, you shall flee like as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with him. Revelation 19:11 through 16, you've read it, I'm sure, over and over. The heavens open, the Lord comes back on white horse, we follow him down. Zechariah saw the same thing that John saw on the Isle of Patmos, the second coming of Christ. And it shall come to pass in that day, Joel talks about this, Joel 2, verse 1 and 2, that the light shall not be clear nor dark. It'll be kind of a hazy day, darker day. But it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night, but it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them towards the former sea, I believe that's the Dead Sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea, that would be the Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee. In summer and in winter shall it be. And the Lord, verse 9, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. You don't have to worry about, we won't have to worry about having a crooked government. We won't have to worry about being able to bribe the judges. And we'll have one king and one Lord, and he'll be there for 1,000 years, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Next thing we see is the rapture of the church. And friends, if you've ever thought about witnessing and telling someone about the Lord, you better do it now. Time is short. It is right around the corner. Israel has changed. Things have changed. God is getting Israel cornered so that they will finally, one time and one time only, trust in Him. Israel can't trust in the world. You can't trust in America. You can't trust in armies. You can't trust all of these rockets, all of these missiles, all of these things that are shot, and Israel is still standing, and Israel is still going. God is fighting for Israel as He did in the day of battle. This is the Lord's fight, and the Lord will take care of it. There are going to be some people that's going to be killed, yes, and hurt, but the Lord is coming. He's coming soon. Are you ready to go? That's the question. If the Lord we were to hear the trumpet sound tonight, are you going to be going up to meet Him in the air? As we read in 1 Thessalonians, where are you? Do you know Christ? Are you saved? Have you been born again? If you have not, don't leave this church tonight without speaking to pastor or some of his men that are here and let them show you how to be born again. I thank God for a 12-year-old girl that the 1st of November 1979, that's how many years? 45 years ago, gave my wife and I a gospel tract, 12 years old. And it was because of that gospel tract the following Sunday that we went to her church. And we heard the gospel. It wasn't booze, it wasn't things of the world that could save me, but it was Christ, the blood of Jesus Christ. It was that day that we both accepted Him, put our life in God's hands, and we've served a faithful God. God has had me and my wife in Israel just as He had Esther for such a time as this. And you've seen part of it here. And that's only just a little part of how God has used the ministry of Project Nehemiah and your help and others like you that are helping support us. Thank you. God bless you. I love every one of you. And let's pray. Father, I thank you, Lord, for this church.